Episode 89, When Darkness Falls. Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of intimacy. You're here with Alisa DiLorenzo.
And Tony DiLorenzo.
Okay, I feel like there's something going on with my mic. Like I got this sexy voice thing going on that I'm hearing. That
Nice. I dig it.
Okay, apparently we're rolling with it. I don't know.
Haven't changed anything.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, we are recording this podcast on September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And would just like to say a special remembrance. I know from reading Facebook posts and having conversations with people far and wide today, we are all remembering where we were, what we were doing, the names of those who were lost in those terrorist attacks. We've all been touched one way or another. And so I know it's not just going to be a one-day remembrance, but we just want to let it be known that we have not forgotten.
Right.
Those of you that looked at us on Facebook, had any interaction with us on Facebook today, Tony and I were actually in two different states on 9/11. And, you know, in a throwback to the dark ages, I did not have a TV or a computer. Actually, you didn't either.
I didn't either.
Because we were in between moving. Mm-hmm. Neither one of us had TV or computer. How did you find out? Radio?
One of the guys I had started working with called me, and then our apartment complex had that clubhouse, and then it was a TV in there. Okay.
Because all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm like, I don't even know how you found out. So yeah, Tony was in Washington State and I was in Orange County, California. And, you know, I had gotten up that morning, just the regular morning. I was going to go for my walk before work. And I so distinctly remember these two guys talking over the back of a pickup truck in the parking lot by where I walked. And there was just this sense watching them that, you know, something must be going on. And then I get back home and you're trying to reach me. You had called me that morning. And I still really, you know, you didn't quite grasp it because it just seemed so surreal. And not having a TV and not having a computer and no smartphone. I mean, it was, you know, like I said, throwback to the dark ages.
Right.
I went into work that morning and was watching all the coverage over the internet. My boss was in Oregon on a family trip, so she was stranded up there.
Right.
Because all of the flights were shut down. You know, I just remember watching that footage over and over again and talking to my parents. My mom had some medical procedure that morning. And so I like, you remember all these bits and pieces of that day. I've seen posts from college friends, people that were in New York City that day, and just what life was like for them as they were processing. And, you know, it's a defining moment for our generation. It's a defining moment for America. And it really does tie in, you know, Tony and I had actually talked about what this show was going to be called prior to.
Alisa and I actually.
Okay, so back up. Yeah, we did talk about what the show was going to be about prior to the realization that we were going to be recording this on 9/11.
Right.
And it ties in very much with what we've titled this podcast, you know, When Darkness Falls. Mm-hmm. The terrorist attacks were obviously a very concrete, specific boom. All of a sudden, life as you know it is upside down.
Right.
And yet, in our marriages sometimes, it's actually a more subtle
and gradual
darkness that comes over, whether it's coming over your attitude, you know, little things that are piling up at work that you just kind of take it and you take it and you take it and you start internalizing it, and it just starts to color your attitude. Or you're having just those little things creep up that start to take your time. Like, oh, you know, one more thing. And before you know it, you're sitting across the table from a stranger.
Yeah. Or, you know, go back 2 weeks, episode 87. and you can hear where Lisa and I are talking about our whole devotional, and how when she told me that she wasn't into it, how that took me aback. And you can probably even go a couple of weeks before that where we were just struggling through some stuff. And then last week in episode 88, where it all sort of hits ahead. And it was at that point in time after we released episode 88 and started getting a lot of feedback from you guys. And thank you all for your feedback and for your prayers and for your insights. I think we got back to all of you. If we didn't, you know what? We still read each and every one of your emails and took them to heart. And we can totally appreciate where you guys are coming from. And as we continue to talk through what we're doing and where we're heading, what really hit me this week for myself was that my attitude, my adjustment, everything that was happening, it came so suddenly. It came so slowly. And it was just at that moment after releasing episode 87 when I was fed up and I was just done. And, you know, part of it was a podcast, but part of it too was just I was frustrated with where Lisa and I were in our marriage. Mm-hmm. Where we were having this lack of communication, this lack of connection in all of our intimacies, except for recreational. I think we'd been doing a lot of exercise and working out together. And just recently I started the asylum, so we're not doing that as much right now. But we're going to get back at it together in October after we renew our vows and all. But just this lack of connection. And, you know, it happened just gradually. Things just sort of here and there, you know. We're not paying attention to each other as much as we should be when we're just even podcasting. When we're talking to each other, there's a little friction still going on a little bit. Even today, we were talking about some grocery stuff, and I could tell Elisa's frustration, and you know, and you know, a little bit of tiredness on my side, having done a really tough workout this morning, and so I can realize and I can see now that these little things, they just start piling up. And for me, it happened on that Tuesday that we released, you know, episode 87, where it just sort of came to a head. Mm-hmm. And for you, you may be sitting here listening going, gosh, it just doesn't seem like everything's running smooth right now in my marriage. And we can totally relate. We understand. I will say, from somebody who's gone through it and going through it, it's probably a really good time to just take your spouse aside and have some time for you guys. In the last 2 weeks, Alisa and I have made it a point to get out on 3 date nights. That Tuesday, I called her and I said, you know what, let's just get a sitter for a couple hours. Or it was actually our neighbor who just took the kids for an hour. And Alisa and I did happy hour sushi. The Friday after that, we got together with our small group friends and just had a fantastic evening. And this past Friday, we have our monthly sitter who does date nights. And we weren't planning on doing it, but she had texted Alisa and said, hey, do you guys want to bring the kids over? Alisa asked me, and I was like, sure, let's go do it, you know?
Well, and that was actually that was driven by Abby, because I had mentioned it to Abby, and I was like, well, I want to go. And I'm thinking, all right, well, we didn't spend all our babysitting money, you know, because we're budget conscious. We didn't spend all our babysitting money last week, so maybe we can pull it. So in the last 2 weeks, we've gone out 3 times.
And that was an area that really had been faltering on us. Mm-hmm. You know, we hadn't been making date nights a priority in our marriage. You know, they were there and we were sort of going.
Well, and part of that too was just
summer,
because we had a number of months in a row where, you know, like June, we had the marriage retreat. So we were gone for a weekend, but we didn't have that. Even though we were gone and it was a dedicated time on our marriage, it wasn't like date night, boom, where we're constant. And then July, I don't remember what happened in July. feel like we did something in July. And then August got all screwed up because first Friday night was the Friday before we were leaving for Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And we didn't get a date night when we were in Massachusetts, which typically happens when we're on a family vacation. And so it was I think the stress of being on a family trip, flying with the kids, having all of that, then coming back and going right into the whole, let's go to school, mm-hmm. that there was just a lot of stress there that had built up because we hadn't said, you know what, in spite of all this, we still need to go on a date. Mm-hmm. We didn't realize the damage that was being done by not finding a substitute date.
Right.
By not saying, you know what, okay, so we missed our first Friday night. Call the sitter. We're going to go out on Tuesday night, or we're going to go out on Thursday. You know, we obviously need this. And that's part of that gradual darkness where things just start to undermine the foundation of your relationship because you're like, oh, well, you know, we'll get back to date night in September.
Well, and I think for myself, you know, the little voices start talking to you. And what ends up happening for many of us, me included, we become a little more reclusive. We shy away from the confrontation, maybe shy away from, hey, we really need to sit down and talk about this. Shy away from, you know, taking the stand and going, hey, what's up? What's happening? How can I help? What can I do to make it better in our marriage right now? What am I doing? You know, looking at ourselves instead of always pointing the finger to our spouse and going, well, you did this wrong and this and this and this wrong. You know, it's really tough at times to point the finger at ourselves when we're doing things incorrectly or wrongly. You know, that is a tough thing to do. It's so much easier for me to point fingers at Alisa and go, well, why isn't she keeping the house up? You know, why isn't she taking care of this? Why hasn't she done this? Why hasn't she done that or this or this? Or why am I the only one who's doing the laundry? Or why doesn't anybody else do the dishes? You know? And so that talk can really undermine what we're trying to build.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And that just that gap just starts to get wider and wider. I mean, we, you know, had this impromptu date night on Friday night because we typically don't go out 2 Fridays in a row. But I told Tony driving home, I'm like, we need to see if we can figure out in the budget how we do make this happen once a week because this is kind of nice for us.
Well, and it worked out that we had a gift card at Outback that we still needed to use up. So that really helped with dinner.
Sure.
We ended up going to the mall afterwards and blew our budget. We were supposed to just get some like fun free underwear from Victoria's Secret.
Okay, yeah, I had a coupon because they send me these coupons for free, you know, like a free pair of underwear. And, you know, I mean, who's going to pass up a free pair of underwear? So we go to the mall. This is a complete aside, but Tony has to go to the bathroom because when we were at dinner, he probably had 6 cups of iced tea. And if you've listened to this podcast for any period of time, you know that when Tony has more than 1 cup of iced tea,
I can have one.
Maybe. He's got to go to the bathroom all the time. So he runs into Nordstrom's to go to the bathroom and got waylaid by the sale rack. And
yeah, they have these really cool jeans on the sale rack. And so I was looking at them. I thought they were nice.
Tony's first Nordstrom's purchase.
It is. It actually is. And I mean, I was checking them out and I found a pair that I liked. And I was like, hey, Elise, I called her because she was in the shoe department.
Said, I had to spend my time somehow.
Yeah, I was like, come on over here. And I've been looking at my wardrobe and it's like sort of getting a little old. And we talk about it in our book called Dress It Up. You know, look nice. You know, present yourself well, you know, on your date nights to your spouse. And I've just been feeling that mine has been a little drab. I've had a really cool physical transformation, having done Insanity, now going through the asylum. I've actually lost one size. One pant size around my waist. And, you know, just toning up and feeling good. And so I was like, you know what? I need it. I don't need, but it'd be nice to have a nice updated, fashionable pair of jeans. And so We were at the rack over there at the
No,
sale rack.
we were at the sale rack. We were not at Nordstrom's rack. There's a difference when you say rack in reference to Nordstrom.
The sale rack. They're in Nordstrom's. And I, tried on some jeans, tried on some shirts. It was cool. Walked away with a nice pair of jeans. I don't know what they are, but they're a little more tight fitting around my thigh. Janelle, our salesperson, was saying this is the in thing. I sure in the heck hope so, and I don't look goofy when I come out of there.
You looked good.
Okay.
You looked good.
They just have to hem them up.
Yeah.
So
they're a little more form fitting. Okay. Just to back up on Tony's transformation. For all of our dating in the first 10 or 11 years we were married, Tony had just these really, what were they? Maybe Levi's, light colored Levi's jeans that he wore. I'm sure I can find a picture somewhere.
We won't share.
They were never in style, ever. And the older we got, the less in style they were. They were nice jeans. It wasn't like they were holy jeans or anything like that. It was just, they were just the jeans that he wore. And so when I started paying a little more attention to my wardrobe and just wanted to look nice, mainly for myself, secondly for him, he picked up on that and started looking nice. And so he's, got the dark wash jeans and, but these are definitely a little more snug on him.
Right.
And he looks great. I mean, partly because he's been spending so much time working out that not so much time that makes it sound like he works out all day long, because he's put such an emphasis into his workouts and he's been doing Insanity. And then he, has transitioned here to Asylum. He's got a good looking body. And I'm glad that he's, making the effort to actually accentuate what he's got, because he looks good.
Yeah.
And Janelle helped.
Okay.
So I've made it very clear that he can't go shopping with Janelle as personal shopper unless I'm there. Just as an aside.
You're so funny.
She was very nice.
She was. So how does this all relate to,
bring us back in here to the darkness.
Yeah. How does this relate? So what ends up happening is we end up reconnecting. Now, you may reconnect in a different way. You may just do a nice, simple dinner together at home. Kids are gone. Or if you don't have kids, you're just making that special time together and talking about things that matter to you. Like this podcast for us. This is the first week, I think, in maybe a handful of podcasts where we knew what we were going to talk about before Sunday afternoon. This is something we love to do, but it needs for us to be something that we talk about before we get right behind the mics.
And I do want to say one thing here, and a lot of the feedback that we got from all of you this week, and I do want to share some of those emails. And we got a few phone calls. I don't know that we're playing any of the phone calls today.
No.
I want to thank you for the permission that you've given us as our listener base. Many of you wrote in and said, if you guys need to take a week off, take a week off. Post a note on Tuesday morning saying, hey, we just needed a week off. If we need to change up the format, you've given us permission to breathe in regard to the podcast. And that is more valuable than you can know. We've been following a pretty rigid time schedule as far as, we podcast Sunday or Monday nights because it's got to be ready to go. I think Tony's got the release time at like 3 a.m. on Tuesday mornings for all of you that like to listen on your way into work. And we had just gotten to a point where we were feeling, confined. And I'm not even necessarily saying that what we're going to change or how we're going to change, but just the fact that you've given us permission to, if we have to put our marriage first on a Sunday or a Monday night and say, you know what, this is a week that we're going to have to skip because we really just need the time. So we have to thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Because that's part of where our darkness has come from in regard to the podcast and in Tony wanting to say a couple of weeks ago, let's pull the plug.
Right.
Because we didn't feel like we had any flexibility. And, you guys have given up some great comments as far as suggestions for show format and for things to talk about. And that's all stuff that we're those are all ideas that we're, assimilating and trying to figure out how that's going to work for us.
Right. And that happens, listen to what Alisa said. I mean, we felt confined because we hadn't talked. We hadn't opened up. So you may be feeling confined in your marriage or an issue that's going on in your marriage. And a lot of that is just now I'm realizing and I'm understanding, and this is stuff I know, it's stuff we've taught and we teach, in our small groups and here on the podcast. But sometimes we need to be reaffirmed. We need to hear it. So if you're feeling like that in your marriage where you feel there's sort of some confinement going on, maybe it's time to open up. Mm-hmm. Take off those masks. Be transparent. For some of you, doing this in a face-to-face might not work. And we had somebody email me this week, asking, this is what's going on, and I've confronted my spouse, and it's just not clicking. And you know what? I think one of the best things we can do at those moments in time are to write letters. Maybe just give your spouse some time to simmer on something by reading your written word and letting them read it, letting them hear it from there. I do always say, though, there needs to be a time constraint at the end of that letter. There has to be something that you are going to do together, and it needs to be written down, because if not, that letter can then just take on, its own time frame. So you've given your spouse a letter, and then you guys don't talk about it for 2 months.
Right.
That isn't going to work. Write the letter so you guys can start somewhere. You guys have it. It's written down. You can go over the points, but put down, hey, on Thursday night at 10 p.m., we're going to go over this. Or we both have, the morning off, or we got a lunch date together. This is when I'd like to talk to you about it. And I think that would help a lot of us clear the air, because when we start getting into these confrontations or these periods where we have a lot on our mind, things just come out. We don't remember what the heck we said. So now it becomes a he said, she said moment, where if we have it written down, we can sort of go down that list and talk about it. Mm-hmm. You can write in the margins or on the back sheet, talk some stuff through. Does it take work? Heck yeah. You know what? It takes a lot of it. Is it worth it? I would think it is. If you can break through in one area, and if there's 3 areas that are of concern to you, and you can have a breakthrough in one of them, man, that is awesome. That is something to celebrate. And so there are many ways that we can touch our spouses when we start noticing that darkness fading and coming upon us.
Yeah, it's it just happens so gradually. And I love that Tony offered the letter as a suggestion to this couple this week, and there's a lot of power in the written word, and it allows you to organize your thoughts so you're not just like spewing, well, I want to talk about this and this and this, and the other person is just sitting there going, wait a minute, I thought you were upset about this, or I'm upset about that. I don't really care about all your other stuff. And all of a sudden it turns into this much bigger explosion that it needs to be. And sometimes when the communication, when you can't communicate verbally, then being able to sit down and do it in a written format to say, here, would you please just take a look at this? And if you're on the receiving end of a letter like that, you need to honor your spouse for taking the time to put his or her feelings down on paper. That's not an easy thing for most people to do.
Right.
And so part of the way that you honor and respect them for taking the time to do that is to make the time to discuss whatever's in there. You may not want to. It may not be a comfortable topic, but let's face it. There are lots of those conversations in marriage.
Right.
And if a dark cloud is starting to come over your marriage, then you better make the time to have that conversation, because if you don't, it's going to go black.
Right. And you're going to just be moving around each other. And just like Alisa and I were. I mean, we were just moving around. I mean, sort of like these two objects just rolling through, doing our thing, be it in all forms of intimacy. Like I said, it just, we're just moving around and not really digging down into what is happening. Mm-hmm. And so we're just giving you insights from what we've gone through. It's all we can do right now. And what we're hoping to do is that you have a breakthrough yourself, that you catch it, that we catch it the next time sooner, so it doesn't linger on. For us, it's not something that's going to end our marriage, but there's definitely a disconnect that we can tell that fire within us isn't burning as hot as we'd like it to, both when it comes to emotional or intellectual or sexual, physical. It's just sort of, it's there. And, what I tell a lot of people, especially when I get this one, it's like, I don't love my spouse. Love isn't a noun. It's a verb. It's something you do. And so for myself, it's me remembering that, what? It's not that feeling inside, but it's the things I do to show my love to Alisa.
I'm just, whenever I hear that phrase, love is a verb, I'm so struck by how many people don't act that way. Mm-hmm. For so many, love is, it's all a feeling. Like, I'm happy with my husband today, I must be in love with him. No, I mean, there are definitely times when I don't like Tony. We've done, we've had a disagreement, or he's done something with the kids, or he's running late, and so it's causing me to run. We have those moments, but you know what? I'll still go clean the bathroom, make sure dinner's on the table. I may not be thrilled with him, but you know what? These are still things that I got to do.
Yeah.
That I do because it makes a difference in his life. Because if I'm running out the door and he's coming home late from work and dinner is done in the crock pot, then you know what? He knows that while we might not be connecting on the same page, I'm still watching out for him. Right. I'm still showing my love by those acts. And granted, acts of service is much higher on his love language, but serving your spouse transcends all love languages.
Yeah, and when you do serve in any form or capacity, and I know I catch myself doing this, I don't have much grace when I do it. It's more like, she better like this. She better appreciate this. And that's not the way you go at it. That just brings that cloud of darkness even more, because you're looking at it as in a vengeful way.
Keeping score.
Yeah, you're totally, and I was totally keeping score. And I'm working on myself to this day with that. If I'm picking up the garage, I was just going, well, she better notice this, that I'm moving everything around again today, because they're all a mess. When I say they all, I mean all my kids and her, because they tend to do that. But
breathe, let it out, deep breath. There we go.
But it's truth. We can't be keeping score when we're doing this stuff. And that's something that really was happening for me. Just it's all about me again. It's all about Tony. And, if Alisa is not going my way, then I'm starting to get upset. And I'm not understanding why she's not liking what I'm talking about, because we weren't talking about that stuff. And so it just keeps piling on and piling it on and piling it on until that one day where you guys and us too, all of a sudden the explosion hits. It's like the volcano that's sitting there and it's simmering, and it's the guys that study it, what are those guys called? Volcanologists? Yeah. So those guys are studying, they see the volcano, and it's, the lava and the crater starting to rise, and they can see something's happening, But then out of nowhere, it explodes. It just happens. And it's sort of like our marriages. We got this stuff, the lava inside of us it's getting higher. There's more tension. There's more impact in our marriages that are affecting us. And then it's that one thing that just cracks us and we blow up.
Does anybody else feel like they've just been through a Discovery Channel expose on volcanoes and marriage?
There you go.
That's what it feels like. It was a very good description.
Well, and I just want you to realize that it's not just all of a sudden that thing happened and you exploded. There's something that's coming. There's something or many things that have happened in your past that lead up to that. And what we're trying to tell you is, before you get to that explosion part, let's diffuse it before that. Let's figure out and understand that this blackness is falling upon us. What do we need to do?
And that right there, is trying to, I've walked through this last 4 or 5 weeks, probably going on 2 months now. As we start to look back and realize how we're handling things and what we've done differently, we're able to say, okay, you know what? This one wasn't as bad as they've been in the past.
No, but there are some things that we didn't do that we should have caught.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
the first chapter in our book is called From the Top Down, God First. Honestly, not even existent between the two of us. Obviously, if you listen to episode 87, we weren't doing our devotional time together. None of it. And we're still trying to interweave that in, and we're having somewhat here and there.
It's getting better.
It's getting there. But, God first, our spouse, kids, work, and that was just jumbled up. And because of that,
so are we.
I mean, how do we expect to be in line and have our foundation if God's not there first? If we're not praying for each other, if we're not praying together, that's going to happen. And then if work comes ahead of it, or the kids come ahead of each of us, well, things are going to be jumbled up. And again, we're always a work in progress. We're always trying. We're always going to make the best progress we can. And sometimes we falter. It's all right. You know what? I've been reading a book called The Dip by Seth Godin, given to us by our good friend here on the one podcast, Ron in Colorado. And really cool book. It's something I would say many of us should read. And, because it's applicable. It talks a lot about business and stuff, but it's really applicable to marriages at times. And
you got to it first. I haven't started reading.
Yeah, I'm really digging it. And I would just say pick it up or check it out on Amazon.com. Really quick read. But it just talks about the dip. That point where you have this excitement. And I'm going to relate it to a marriage. You have this excitement in your marriage and everything's on high. And then you go down through this dip, this low time. And a lot of people quit in the dip. They get out because, it's not fun. It's the low time. It's the hard times. It's the weight of the world pressing down on your shoulders and you don't know what's going to happen. But it's those that are able to stay through within the dip, knowing that it's worthwhile, because he also talks about a cul-de-sac, which is when you hit a dead end and you should quit the dead end. So that might be something in your marriage that you're just like, hey, this isn't working, so let's get the heck out of this. Maybe an activity or some church mission or church ministry you're in that's just, it's not working. But anyways, you're in that dip, but it's after that dip that you come out and you soar. And there's that verse in the Bible where it says we soar on wings like eagles. So if you think about where Lisa and I have been, we've been in this dip down low, but I really believe that if we place all that we have back unto God, get each other first in our marriage after God, we can get right back up there and we'll come out of this dip and we'll be on wings, hanging out with God again.
Just the irony, that was my, that verse, Isaiah 40:31 is the one that you just read, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. That was actually my Bible verse when I was in labor with Alex.
Yes.
It's actually the one I've used both, actually with all 3 kids.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
You know, where do you go when that darkness starts to come? And how long do you go as the darkness is falling over your marriage, over your relationship, before you say, you know what? We need to put the brakes on here. I need a little light.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put some light on the issue. Let's put some light and focus, attention. I mean, when you're putting light on something, you're focusing on it. You're drawing attention to it. If you haven't been putting attention into your marriage, if you haven't been putting attention onto your spouse, if you haven't been addressing the things that are issues in your marriage, be it finances, be it children, be it in-laws, be it jobs, then how can you get past that?
Right.
You're going to have those conversations, whether it's written or verbal. You're going to have to communicate, because you've got to draw the attention back to that fundamental relationships. God first, spouse second.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're starting to sense that darkness come in your marriage, chances are the light is not shining on one of those 2 areas, and most likely both.
Right.
You know, so come back to the beginning, come back to that first chapter in our book, come back to God as the center of your marriage, and just say, you know what, we need to take this and bring it into the light.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can tell when the darkness is coming. You can tell when you start to feel disconnected. It's gradual. You might not notice it the first couple of times that something happens, but you start to look across the table and you're like, stranger.
Yeah.
Stranger at the table, stranger at my bed, stranger in the house.
Right. So what are the steps you can take? Pray. You know, if you're not praying with each other, pray for your spouse is number 1. Number 2, transparency. You got to be open. You got to be honest. You got to take these masks off, folks. 3, you got to communicate them. And be it either verbal or written, you need to be able to sit down and discuss them. You know, and 4th, I would say, is celebrate when you get out of it. You know, look at it, celebrate it, enjoy it, look back on it and go, okay, this is what happened and this is how we got here. Because I'm thinking if you're like us, sometimes these things reoccur. And so what you want to do is you want to just look back and realize why it's happening, what the triggers are, and being able to get through them. 5th, man, just love on each other after that. You know, really just love on each other and enjoy it. Enjoy your marriage, you know? Like we said, you're going to hit that dip, but you start coming up and you're on that high. You know, God didn't make this easy for us. We're going to hit it again, but enjoy those high points. Yeah?
Yeah.
Lisa.
No, you just kind of summed it up. I didn't,
Okay.
You know.
All right.
I got nothing to add.
You are? So thank you all again for all your love, your prayers. It was so awesome. And we want to keep hearing. We want to hear what you think about this. Go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com. Leave us your comments. Let us know what you're thinking. For those of you who have said you are going to sign up and become monthly partners, thank you so much. To me, that means a lot. For those of you who've not quite picked up our book, thinking about it, you can go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com. You can hit the book tab or the store tab there, and you'll see stripped down. You can get it in 3 different formats. So we love you guys. We thank you so much for all your love. Take care.